We're back with the preview show, and it's an early UFC card this weekend. UFC on ABC. Harry is delighted. I'm not actually too upset about that card being on early either, Harry. I mean, I get up in the morning, I get some breakfast, get to watch some violence, get to watch some fights. You know, Ian Garry will have fought by tea time. You know what I mean? It'll be perfect. And it's a pretty decent card as well. Couple of interesting fights throughout. Jairzinho Rozenstruik, Jailton Almeida at the top of the bill. Anthony Smith, Johnny Walker will also compete in the co-main event at 205. And we have Ian Garry competing for a chance to get into the rankings in the welterweight division. We're going to break down all those three fights within the next hour. We're going to take a little bit of look at the Bellator card later on in the show. A couple of fights that pique our interest in that as well. Harry, how are you? You're off to see Tom Segura later on. We're both fresh recording this at reasonable times for both of us for once.
Absolutely. Inside baseball, right? Peeling the curtain back. Ian and I both massive fans of stand-up comedy, and we talk often about who our favorites are and who we're going to see and who we'd like to see. And there's a bucket list of guys that and women that I'd really like to see. And Tom Segura is one of those people on my list. And so I get the opportunity to go with a couple of the lads tonight. We're going to go watch him I'll have to leave in, about an hour and change after this is done. And I'm very excited. Very, very, very excited. But that's super fucking happy about the time of this card on the weekend. Love it. Absolutely love it.
There'll be plenty of jokes tonight, but there'll be no joking around on Saturday night, Harry. And we'll start off with Jairzinho Rozenstruik and Jailton Almeida. Look at myself, yourself, Shawnee, Spencer. We've all talked about Jailton ahead of this fight many a times, and we're getting to see him in there now with a pretty solid test, but a winnable test here. You would think stylistically that this matchup it was going to suit him down, but he's a real player in the heavyweight division right now, is Jailton Almeida, Harry, and it'll be interesting to see how he does against a pretty astute striker, but like at the same time, I think we'd be fooling ourselves if this wasn't a very winnable fight for a guy like Jailton, but it's a good step up in competition nonetheless. How do you kind of see this matchup?
I feel like this kind of is an IQ test for Jailton Almeida. And we said that about Kron Gracie and Charles Jourdain earlier, but we know that Jairzinho Rozenstruik isn't going to look to take this fight down, right? He's not going to look to set up technical takedowns. He's not going to barrel Jailton Almeida against the cage. And if he does, he's not going to be looking to take him down from there. He's going to be looking to dirty box. He's going to be looking to land his knees. He's going to be looking to land his elbows. Jairzinho Rozenstruik has made a history, made a career of being a quote-unquote smaller in stature heavyweight than your average heavyweight in his kickboxing. So he's good at bringing guys onto him and landing big left hands, big right straights, but he's also good at finding himself inside space and landing those shots. He's used to fighting big athletes. He's used to fighting guys that are larger than him. And I don't think that's going to be the case necessarily here in the size department. Jailton Almeida isn't a massive heavyweight himself, but certainly in the athleticism department, in the explosivity department, Jailton Almeida holds all the top trump cards in comparison to Jairzinho Rozenstruik. And I think for Almeida, really, this is a great fight for a number of reasons. Jailton will obviously be in the gym working on his hands, working on his striking, working on his movement, working on his footwork, working on his defensive head positioning and his footwork for his defensive side of his striking. And this is an opportunity for him to showcase a little bit of that should he wants to, right? Jairzinho Rozenstruik is a storied striker, as I've just mentioned. And so if Almeida wants to go out and sort of find out where his level is, he can do that a little bit on the feet. But I think we all know where the strength and depth of this fight lies, and it's in the grappling department for Jailton Almeida. It's not often that we see heavyweights, even when Fabricio Verdum was fighting, you don't see heavyweights with this style of grappling, where it's a massive explosive takedown, a massive lift, a massive dump. We saw it a little bit with DC, but then to add on the positional dominance that's not wrestling focused, but it's submission focused, you don't see that a lot at heavyweight. And we saw and have seen in Jailton Almeida's last performances, when he gets guys on the ground, it's pretty much curtains. It's not a Merab Dvalishvili where it's sort of a drowning by takedowns, a drowning of attrition. It's very much when you're down, And it's very likely that there's going to be a ton of strikes to soften you up. And then there's going to be a submission attempt at the end. I wrote a severe spotlight on him not so long ago, just because I was so impressed with the dominance of position, especially at heavyweight, where guys have an ability in some fashion to hulk out of positions and to just burst up and just get up, as they say for Derek Lewis, right? To be able to hold guys down and to be able to control them and constrict that space, working towards damage or submission, is the thing that I find the most impressive. And I think, as you rightly say, if Jailton Almeida manages to take Rozenstruik down and hold him down, a similar pattern can occur here. But he has to get there.
Yeah, he absolutely does. And that's going to be the big test in this main event, Harry. And that's why you just put him in there against a guy like Rozenstruik. We've not seen Jailton Almeida strike all that much on the feet yet. What his style possesses is the perfect style for modern day mixed martial arts. Look, we talked about the Gracie style that we've seen at 288 wasn't. But Jailton Almeida, when he gets a fight down, he's looking for position, all right, which you need to do, but he's also looking to get shots off. And that's so important. And it may have been a thing that might have cost Henry Cejudo in his main event against Aljamain Sterling, who, like, in Cejudo, found himself in these kind of positions, but was unable to get off any damage. And okay, the positions do not score anymore unless it's dead even. And it can take simply one shot on the feet or one shot on the mat that can actually skew a judge's opinion here. So it's one thing that I'm looking at here with Jailton Almeida is that, okay, we haven't seen him on the feet yet, but he's got the perfect style to take guys down. And look at, he hasn't really been he's been taking guys down and landing damages. He hasn't really been needing the judges all that much recently. But even if he does get there as well, he does have a style that is going to score well on the scorecards too. Do you feel that way? And let me ask you maybe another little question as well. Just say he doesn't get it down. I think we're going to find out what he's made of on the feet and what he's made of if his back is against the wall in Jailton Almeida, because look, it's a good stylistic matchup, but Jairzinho Rozenstruik is not going to be too easy of an out. You know, it's not a result if he wins that we're going to actually ignore and just say, okay, on to the next one. This will actually have some great evidence to show that Jailton Almeida is a true danger in the heavyweight division.
Absolutely. Like, obviously Dana White made his announcement the other day, and he announced that 290 was not going to be John Jones and Stipe Miocic, but instead it was going to be Alexander Volkanovski versus Ihor. Jesus Christ, I went blank there for a second. Sorry, lads.
It happens.
Now, for me, it does kind of take away a little bit of the shine of this fight, because if Johnny Bones and it was Miocic were fighting on International Fight Week, and Almeida goes out here and runs through Jarzinho inside 3 rounds or whatever he does, well, then Almeida can just jump on that mic and be like, I got 2 or 3 months to wait. I'm going to rest up. I'm going to go home. I'm going to have some time. And then whenever you boys figure that out, just so you know, I'm coming. Like, I'm next. It's me. Tom Aspinall, forget him. He's not coming back yet. It's me. Now, obviously, Dana did mention Tom Aspinall, and I think that spices things up a little bit, right? If they wanted to do Tom Aspinall versus Almeida for a main event somewhere down the line, should both of them get through their respective bouts, I'm happy for that. But in the same vein, because heavyweight is so lacking in contenders, I also kind of don't like that fight at all. But, you know, I digress slightly.
I was actually going to ask you that question as well. Is like, you know, we're probably going to be keeping an eye on Tybura and Tom Aspinall, and it's likely that if Jailton wins this, he could be kind of matched up with them next as well. And yeah, I'm kind of unsure. Like, I think it makes sense from an activity point of view, but like the way things is progressing in the heavyweight division right now in the UFC, obviously we might not see Jones and Stipe until November, which means that fight is going to happen, and then we're not going to get another fight probably for another 6 months again after that, if Jones even decides to go back, because we're going to go through this kind of retirement merry-go-round with John Jones, where even with a well-known fight ahead of him, he's announced his retirement and announced he's on retirement already before even fighting that Stipe fight. So it's like a heavyweight division that's massively up in the air, and we could be looking at a guy in Jailton Almeida where you might think it might be crazy for us to say could be fighting for a title within the space of a year and a half. But I think there's a good chance of that, but maybe with an interim title, depending on what the situation is at the very, very top of the division. But it's very, very interesting to see. Any final thoughts on the main event, Harry, before we move on down to the co-main?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to piggyback on what you said about Jarzinho not being a tough out. Like, if we can just quickly run through the fights that Jailton Almeida's had so far. So he comes in and makes his UFC debut against Danilo Marquez. Not a great fighter. Fine. He then goes and fights Parker Porter. Again, not a great fighter. He then goes and fights Anton Turkai, who is probably the worst of the lot of them. And then he goes out and takes Shami. Now, look, Shami Abdurakhimov is a solid fighter, a very good veteran, a heavyweight test that he's really tough to get out of there. Very, very durable fighter, knows his way around the grappling department, can hit a bit, takes a shot really well. And Jailton Almeida went out and smoked him inside 2 rounds. Fine. And I think it was that win that everyone sort of looked up and said, okay, all right, fine. We have something here. Because at the lower levels of heavyweight, it's similar to the lower levels of middleweight, that just a level of athleticism and a couple of techniques will get you really, really far in those leagues. But as you start to creep up the echelons, the learning curve and the technical curve is vast. And when you beat a guy like Shamil Abdurakhimov, not by decision, but you finish him, that tells us something about who you are, right? And I think now the jump from Shamil Abdurakhimov to Jairzinho Rozenstruik is a massive jump. Make no mistake about that. This is a huge step up for Jailton Almeida. And if he goes out there and performs the way that we think he may do, which is he may take the fight down, and if he takes the fight down, I suspect he wins from there. Against Shamil Abdurakhimov, he needed 2 rounds to do it, which means he needed more than 1 takedown. Does he get more than 1 takedown against Jairzinho Rozenstruik, or does Rozenstruik time a knee? Does he time an uppercut? Does he time a check left hook? Does he manage to find his footwork against the cage and do some work against Jailton Almeida? These are questions that I think are very, very legitimate, and we will learn a lot about who Jailton Almeida is and what his stealing is going to be in the division. We may, as analysts, as pundits, as media members, we may have an idea of what Jailton Almeida could be, and I think both of us wouldn't be too uncomfortable in saying that I suspect I'll see Jailton Almeida fighting for UFC heavyweight or light heavyweight gold at some point in his career, but I don't know whether it's right now. Like, I was dead wrong last week. I said Yan Xiaonan is going to get trucked by Jessica Andrade because, to me, the stylistic matchup was fantastic. I could be saying the same thing here. Jailton Almeida may run across the cage, naively shoot a double leg, and Jarzinho says, thanks very much, mate. Here's the right uppercut, and you're going to sleep. That is absolutely a possibility here. And so whilst I think the fight favors Almeida and his skill set, make no mistake, this is a massive, massive step up for him.
Absolutely. Very, very well said. And someone else looking to step up is Johnny Walker, who takes on Anthony Smith in the co-main event. A little bit of Irish interest here, obviously, with Johnny Walker training out of SPG in Ireland. Looking to kind of come in here and insert himself in the title mix, really. That's what the prominence of a win in this co-main event is, Harry. I'm interested to see Johnny Walker because it's just with Johnny Walker, with me, it's like there's a good fighter in there somewhere, Harry, just waiting to come out. And we do see snippets of it every now and again, but he gets crazy sometimes. He gets caught up into wild exchanges. And, you know, in the light heavyweight division and in the heavyweight division, you know, you don't really have as much of a chance to do that, or you cannot get away with the amount of mistakes that you can make on the feet, maybe in the lighter weight classes, because the results and the consequences are much more catastrophic in the heavier weight classes. And I think we've seen that from Johnny Walker time and time again. What way coming in here against Anthony Smith do you think he needs to approach this fight? Does he come in, go hell for leather? Does he go and fight that Thiago Santos fight where he is a little bit on the outside and you're fighting for a close decision? Does he mix it up? Because I think the key for Johnny Walker is finding that mix of madness and composure. And he's struggled to try and find and doing it. We've seen snippets in some fights. We've seen other snippets in other fights of the calmness and of the madness as well. What's the best kind of formulation to come in here against Anthony Smith in the co-main event?
So I'll answer a question you didn't ask, and then I'll answer this question. And that's the first question is like, or the first point to make, I think, is fighters are who they are. Now, it's very rarely do we find a fighter who comes out and completely reinvents himself. Now, what I mean by reinvents himself isn't just fights in a new style, but when you see a fighter under pressure, when you see a fighter in chaos, they regress to who they actually are. They regress to whatever their base level of training, whatever their base character is. That's what they regress to. And my example of that is Gilbert Burns last week against Belal Muhammad. He hurt his left shoulder, and so he regressed entirely to, I have a big bowling ball right hand and I have a check right hook. That's not the way Gilbert Burns has been fighting for the last 3 years that we've been covering him so gloriously in his tenure at the upper echelons of the division at 170. Having a big bowling ball right hand doesn't get you to that position at 170. But when a fighter is faced with chaos, they return to who they actually are. They return to what their notions are at the fiber of their being. At the fiber of his being, Johnny Walker is a mad bastard. And so when you get into the situations he does in fights, because there are moments when he tries to be technical, but when you're technical and you're point fighting and you're on the outside and you're using that vast range and that vast dynamism that you have to your advantage, some guys just try to bring the chaos because that at times is antidote to the balance, to the rhythm, to the sort of solitude of that style. A bit of chaos can help you. And so as soon as the chaos comes, Johnny Walker's brain switches and he fights chaos with chaos. Now, in this Anthony Smith fight, I actually think the chaos is the answer because Anthony Smith is a guy that is hittable. Anthony Smith is a guy that we've seen, if you go and you fight with him in a point starting file, he too can build a rhythm. He too can get to positions where he can hit you. Look at the fight against, I've completely forgotten his name, and I can't believe it because he's on Team Powell.
Ankalaev, Magomed Ankalaev.
Thank you. After the Anthony Smith fight, we were saying, I don't know about Magomed Ankalaev. Anthony Smith was piecing him up for a good minute. A good minute and a half. He was touching him, and Magomed then said, oh, fuck, let me grapple with him. Takes him down, does the things, whatever, no problem. But Anthony Smith is not a guy that you want to allow to build a rhythm. He's a veteran of this division for a reason. And so I kind of feel like for Johnny Walker, going out and doing the mad bastardry, which, by the way, I would not, as a coach, be advising him to do generally. But I think in this fight where you're coming against a guy whose base style is more of a point fighting, throw a 1-2, get out of the way, do the stuff, not use superior head movement, but literally move my body out of the way. I feel like Johnny Walker just chasing him around the cage, trying to puck his head off, might work for him in this fight.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see. I kind of feel that way too. I think if you go in there and you let Anthony Smith gain a little bit of confidence at the very start, I think that's going to be bad news for Johnny Walker. So, you've got to get in there and land heavy early and get the respect of Anthony Smith and then not give him a chance to recover. Look, we talked about Caelan Loughran against Dylan Hazan on the breakdowns this week, Harry, and it was that front kick up the middle that hurt Dylan Hazan, and you could see that he was hurt. And then Caelan Loughran didn't give him a second after that. And I feel that that's something that Johnny Walker is going to have to try and do in this co-main event as well. And, a win for him here kind of inserts him right up into the top 5, and he's in the discussion as well. Is it crazy to kind of think about a guy who, was only 1 win in his last 5 there coming into 2020? It has worked his way in. Obviously, 2 disappointing losses to Teixeira and Rakic. That's Anthony Smith. I think to Jamahal Hill and Thiago Santos. He's found his way back against Kutalaba and against Paul Craig. And even though those are good wins, like we said, we're talking about a little bit of a step up here for Johnny Walker. And these are the kind of fights where he's failed in the past and he's going to have to get over. To me, I feel that this run he's on right now is probably going to be the most pivotal of his career. I know he's still 31 years of age, but, business is picking up in the light heavyweight division. We have Prochazka and Hill at the top. Johnny Walker's already lost to Hill as well. So, and you never know, a Jailton Almeida loss could send him back down to the light heavyweight division as well here on Saturday night. And that's another kind of a fighter into the mix here. the stakes for Anthony Smith coming in here. Do you feel that Anthony Smith is using maybe one last title run to get himself up? Does you think he really wants to be in there anymore? He's got the podcast with Bisbing. He's got the analyst work. He has his finger in a lot of pies right now. And it'll be interesting to see how he does in this fight, really. Anthony Smith is always game. He can always rely on his, you know what you're going to get when you get an Anthony Smith fight. You're going to get composure. You're going to get a guy who's landing shots who believes in his ability. But there comes a time when you don't have the full amount of dedication to the sport anymore. And to me, with Anthony Smith, it kind of is shaping up that way now, where he's seeing other avenues outside of going in there and throwing some punches and winning fights and losing and training camps and everything like that. There's so many things that can kind of get in your way. Where do you think his head is at right now when it comes to fighting?
I've no idea is the honest answer. I think Saturday will tell us, right? Saturday will give us a glimpse. Sorry, it won't tell us, but it'll give us a glimpse. I think it's amazing that guys like Anthony Smith can stay in the fight game, but not necessarily have to fight. I think props to him for setting up a career for himself after fighting is finished. But like you say, and I think this is always it's the other side of this, is that these fighters are always fighters. You know, you listen to Bisping talking at times, and he talks as if it's him fighting in there. He talks as if, in a way, and again, this isn't disrespectful at all. It feels like he's kind of jealous in a way that his fighting career is over and that there are guys that are still in there, still doing the thing. And I can only imagine how hard it is for somebody like a Michael Bisping, like an Anthony Smith, to have dedicated so much of their life to a sport, and then to be around the periphery of it and be grateful to still be around the periphery of it, but not actually be able to do the thing, you know, because you walk into fight night and you get those feelings and you go and touch the cage and you rub the canvas and you do the thing, but you won't actually get to do the fighting part. But for Anthony Smith, I mean, I feel like the Ryan Spann Johnny Walker fight was two fighters doing both two identical fighters fighting, right? And obviously one of them won, one of them lost, but we saw what Anthony Smith did to Ryan Spann. And the same thing can happen here against Johnny Walker, right? Anthony Smith could come in and say, all this stuff is cool. I'm just going to plant some hands on you because I know that when I plant some hands on you, you're going to wilt a bit and you're going to make a ton of mistakes and I'm going to catch a neck or I'm going to catch something, right? And we know that Johnny Walker not just does the chaos positively, but also does the chaos negatively, right? Like gives up bottom mount and fucking doesn't finish fights when he should finish fights and all that stuff. And I think Anthony Smith is the antidote to that Johnny Walker as much as Johnny Walker is the antidote to the Anthony Smith. And so I think if I'm Johnny Walker, I'm doing the chaos until I hurt him. And then I'm doing the balance. I'm doing exactly what Kalen Lochran did, as you so well said. I'm hurting him. And when he's hurt, now I'm going to chill the fuck out and pick my shots because I don't want to allow somebody as tough as Anthony Smith to find a way back into a fight. And if I'm Anthony Smith, I'm just waiting for Johnny Walker to make a mistake, because he will. He absolutely will.
Yeah, that fight could end up in chaos, and I honestly don't know. Like, it's an impossible one to call, really, isn't it? Because it could happen, and as are a lot of Johnny Walkers. But Anthony Smith, no easy out in the co-main event. That's at 205. Moving down to the welterweight division, Harry, a lot of Irish interest on this. Ian Garry is going in there, and he is going to take on Daniel Rodriguez in the welterweight division. Daniel Rodriguez ranked at number 15. It will be Ian Garry's chance to hit up and break the top 15 of the UFC welterweight division. Are you, first of all, before we get in, are you happy to see him in this kind of opportunity of a fight? Do you think it's the right time? Do you think it's the right opponent?
Yeah, I think it's the right opponent. Right time, I don't know. We're going to find out, right? But the right opponent, absolutely. Because we've took a step up. Daniel Rodriguez is a big man. I'm very interested to see what they look like together, both on fight night, but also at the weigh-ins. D-Rod is a thick man, large man, can do a bit of hitting, is nowhere near as technical as Ian Garry on the feet, but packs a bit of power, very durable, can wrestle, can grapple, can counter grapple as well as offensively grapple. And so I think that the style matchup for Garry is great because D-Rod will entertain the fight wherever Ian Garry wants to take it. If he wants to stand and he wants to try and counter strike, I think D-Rod will engage in that sort of fight. If Ian wants to stand in the pocket and throw big shots, I think Daniel Rodriguez will happily engage in that type of fight. If they want to grapple, if Ian wants to try and do some of the stuff we've seen against Gabe Green, where he pushes him up against the fence and he wants to take the fight down and he wants to show some of the work he's been doing in his own grappling, I think Daniel Rodriguez will be happy to do that too. And so I think this is a perfect fight for him in that Rodriguez isn't going to come in with an A game, and that A game is purely one thing. Rodriguez is good enough that he could do a bit of everything and is happy to go wherever he wants. He reminds me of the welterweights Brad Tavares, right? Who could just do everything, has a specific style he would like to go with, but has an ability to go wherever the fight wants to go. And we're going to find out a lot about Ian Garry, and maybe people won't realize that we're finding out a lot about Ian Garry, but we're going to find out a lot about Ian Garry, because the jump from the outside 30 to that top 15 in the welterweight division is big. It's really, really big. And so if he goes in and he outpoints D-Rod over 3 rounds and looks good doing so, doesn't take a massive shot like he did in his last fight, cruises through to victory, we know that there is a lot left in that locker for Ian Garry. Equally, if Ian Garry goes out and stops Daniel Rodriguez and does so clinically, everyone needs to stand up and really, really take a look at what we have here, because that's a massive, massive thing. If he goes out and struggles, however, we learn a lot about Ian Garry also, and that is that this was the right fight at the right time, and that we could slow roll his progression, because he's been open about this previously, that he's gone to Sanford, or went to Sanford, and obviously he's diversified his training a little bit in the last little while, but he went to Stanford because he knew in himself he had a massive amount of things still to learn. And so that's why I love this fight specifically. I guess I've answered my own question about whether this is the right time, but it's like, now we get to find out just a bit more about who Ian Garry really, really is. And at this stage of his career, that's all you can really ask for, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. I kind of explained it exactly the same way on the old triangle this week as well, where it's like you, the test that we're going to see here is that if Ian Garry goes in there and wipes the floor with Daniel Rodriguez and gets a finish, well, that's like ultra impressive here. But also as impressive if he goes out there and absolutely just puts a clinic on him and wins the decision. A decision win against Daniel Rodriguez is a good win. Stylistically, I think it's the perfect matchup for Ian Garry, because Ian Garry is long, fights off his jab, and Daniel Rodriguez is going to play that game as well. He's going to want to try and get on the inside, and he's going to want to try and get off his shots as well. Now, one thing I would say, Harry, and I'm curious to see what you think about this, if he makes a mistake like he did against Song Kenan, I don't think he's going to get away with it in this fight. But luckily for Ian Garry, that mistake has come, and the work after that. Okay, we seen the mistake out there. All right, he went for a naked body shot, left his chin open, got clipped, got hurt, recovered, got the win. You know, that's the benefit for Ian Garry that he has coming into this fight, that he's made that mistake and he has the time to work on it and ensure that it doesn't happen again. But he can't afford to be making slip-ups like that against ranked opposition, I don't think, Harry. What about you?
Yeah, to me, this is a maturity test as much as anything else for Ian Garry. Because now, you know, when we watched this Cage Warriors debut against James Sheehan, we were like, oh, this lad's raw, but he's got serious skills. You could tell there that there are serious skills in this lad. Great. Perfect. No problem. And then we went out and we saw his performance against Jack Grant. And it was mature, and it was calm, and it was collected, and it was by far the best performance we have seen. Everyone, you could talk about the Rustam Akman performance, and that was great, but he just went over and smashed that dude. The thing that impressed me so much about the Jack Grant performance is he did the John Jones thing. He said, oh, here, look, you're a grappler? Cool, let's grapple. I'm going to show you my maturity in this skill set, in this arena at this time. And this fight is an opportunity for Ian Garry to show the same level of maturity at a much higher level. If he goes in against D-Rod, as I said, and is clinical and is clean and is precise and keeps himself safe, we've learnt a lot about Ian Garry's potential. But now, at this level of skill that you're facing, and at this point in your career, the question is, are you mature enough to be here? Because if you are, you're not going to make those mistakes. And if you're not, D-Rod will find your chin.
Absolutely. It's going to be a fascinating fight. I can't wait. That'll be on pretty early for Irish fans as well. So you'll be able to check that out. Running really, really quickly throughout the rest of the card, Harry, as we said, like we're not going to spend too much time on the rest of the fights. We might move over and have a little bit of a chit chat about Bellator as well. Carlos Ulberg is next on the card against Ihor Potieria. That is an interesting fight between two heavy hitting guys as well. What do you think? What's your thoughts on that fight?
I think Carlos Ulberg is the better fighter overall. Potieria goes out and just beats the brakes off the ghost of Shogun Rua in his last one. Ulberg can be hit, and we've seen that in his UFC debut and some of his recent performances. But I think he's the more technical kickboxer. It's probably going to be a stand-up banger. But yeah, I mean, sure, sign me up. Why not?
Let's go. Another banger. A couple of bangers in a row here. And it's kind of like with the first card or the first fight on the main card and the last fight on the prelims, a little bit of a veterans club here. Tim Means versus Alex Morono up first in the 170-pound division. And look, there was talks about UFC and the card placements. I know Brandon Royval was a little bit upset. He was on the prelims. He said he should have opened the show. The UFC haven't really messed up this one. I think this is a fantastic fight to open up a main card, and Tim Means and Alex Morono, two guys who are well known for entertaining fights and going out there and putting on a show. I mean, I've got to be looking at Alex Morono coming in here. He's just this durable guy that it's hard to know at this stage of his career. He's been in a lot of wars now as well. Obviously didn't go to plan against Santiago Ponzinibbio, but he was winning that fight before he got stopped, really, to be honest. So I think he has the ability to win this fight too. Do you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I feel like Alex Morono is underrated in a lot of ways. And I think Tim Means is coming to the end of his career. And so if we can, I mean, yeah, if Alex Morono goes out and looks anything like he looked against Rhys McGee, he wins this fight without a shadow of a doubt.
100%. Moving on down, Matt Brown versus Court McGee sounds like a fight that should have taken place on Tough 6 back in the day. We old school. I mean, I don't know how long these guys have left really in the tank. Harry, do you?
I mean, look, I'll watch a Matt Brown fight whenever it's available, because you might have a chance at a dude getting his skull crushed with an elbow. And so sign me up. But these are the kind of guys I think that we just have to appreciate that they're still here and that they're still fighting. It's the same in some ways with Tim Means, right? We have to appreciate that he's still available, still fighting. I think Alex Morono has a little bit more in the tank than Tim Means does. But when you're looking at these types of veterans, I just think we have to look on and smile, look on and know that these guys were trailblazers for the likes of an Ian Garry to even step foot in the UFC octagon. And so we must applaud them. We must hold our hands up. But this is the right type of matchmaking for both guys at this level of their career.
Couldn't have said it any better myself. Next up, Carl Williams and Chase Sherman in the heavyweight division. Good luck to those two gentlemen. We will stop and we will talk about Cody Stamann, who's stepping in here to face Douglas Silva de Andrade in the bantamweight division. And I mean, you know, this bantamweight division, Harry, no matter when there's a matchup created on it, it's always sparks a little bit of interest. And this one is no different either, coming in on Saturday night. A nice little matchup here between the two. Who do you fancy? Is Cody Stamann? I mean, Douglas Silva de Andrade was beaten by unanimous decision by Said Nurmagomedov. I mean, there ain't no shame in that whatsoever. Cody Stamann come back after losing to Said Nurmagomedov with 2 wins over Eddie Wineland and Lewin Lacerda in his last fight with a unanimous decision. A very interesting, close stylistic matchup here. I find it hard to separate these two gentlemen. How about you?
I don't know, because Stamann is thick, he's big, he's a good wrestler, can do a bit of hitting. Douglas Andrade is just a wild man, right? That fight against Sergey Morozov, well, I mean, if anyone hasn't gone and watched it, just go and watch it, because it has absolutely everything you could possibly want in a fucking barn burner of a fight. It was absolute brilliance from start to finish. And so I just don't know. I think Douglas Silva de Andrade is a little bit more durable than Cody Stamann, and I think he thrives in that chaos just a touch more. I think technique for technique, skill for skill, they're pretty well matched. I just think this is going to be a fight about, can Cody Stamann drain Douglas Silva de Andrade early? Can he put him on his back? Can he beat him up a little bit? Can he try and drag this fight into an area where he has a better gas tank and he could set a pace? Because if not, Douglas Silva de Andrade will set a pace, and the question is whether Cody Stamann can stay with that pace.
That's the question, and it's going to be, I think, organized chaos in the cage on Saturday night when these two men step in. That's definitely one that's worth checking out early on the prelims. A quick run through the rest of the card here. Nathan Levy will go in there and take on Pete Rodriguez in the lightweight division. Ji Young Kim and Mandy Bohm. We see Mandy Bohm in there again. She has fought recently, hasn't she, Harry? Only a little while ago, I believe so. Let me.
Possibly. I will pull up her record right now.
Was she involved in?
She fought Victoria Leonardo in 2022. She was supposed to fight Ji Young Kim 3 months ago, but Bone got ill and had to pull out.
That is right. Yeah, that is right. Mandy Bohm, Ji Young Kim, Gabe Green, and Brian will battle it out in the welterweight division. And starting off the card, Jessica Rose Clark will take on Tainara Lisboa in the 135-pound division. That wraps us up for the UFC talk. If anything big happens on the undercard or on the main card, you know that we'll be talking about it on the breakdown show. But let's move over to France. Vive la France. And we've got a decent Bellator card coming up on Friday, tomorrow, at the release of this podcast. Gegard Mousasi versus Fabian Edwards on the main event duties. And this is a very interesting fight. I mean,
fantastic fight.
Gegard Mousasi normally comes out and wins these fights, but I feel right now is a very, very good time to be fighting Gegard Mousasi. And I'm very interested to see how Fabian Edwards comes in here, Harry, and kind of game plans for someone like Gegard. Obviously, you go back and you look at Gegard's defeats to Johnny Eblen, recent defeat. Like, we'll just talk about the most recent one, to Johnny Eblen. A hardcore grappler is what we could kind of describe him as. His last defeat before that was Rafael Lovato Jr., a hardcore grappler as well. So, I mean, these things do happen, and that's kind of the pedigree to beat a guy like Gegard Mousasi is kind of, frustrating him on the feet and also with the grappling. And it'll be very interesting to see what Fabian Edwards comes up with here. We did see him in there last time with Charlie Ward, and he was doing some grappling things there as well. But Fabian Edwards is known for his kind of stylish striker, and I'm not sure that on its own is going to get the job done here against Gegard Mousasi. But if it does, it'd be a massively impressive feat for the Birmingham man. How do you see it going?
Now is the time. If Fabian Edwards is ever going to make something of himself and his name, it's now. Gegard Mousasi is 37 years of age. He's had 178 million fights in MMA. And whilst that lends itself obviously to having an incredible amount of experience, an incredible amount of fight time, an incredible amount of cage time, cage awareness, ring craft, all of that stuff, your body can only hold up to a certain level of performance for a certain amount of time. And Gegard Mousasi will 110% go down as one of the trailblazers in European MMA, an absolutely fantastic fighter on his day. And to your point, Fabian has a tough fight on his hands because Gegard can do everything. We've seen it, but it really does depend with Gegard as to which one turns up. Sometimes he comes out and he looks nasty and he looks mean and he's ruthless and he takes things to guys and he beats the fuck out of lads. And then in the same vein, you get him and he's passive and he's lackadaisical and he gets taken down and he gets back up and he does some stuff and he throws some hands and he just looks okay. And so I think if I'm Fabian Edwards, I'm trying to go out and I'm trying to set a pace on Gegard early. I'm going to try and beat him up a bit, go to his body. I'm going to try and kick his legs away. I'm going to try and maybe force him to grapple when he doesn't want to, because my issue, I guess, with Fabian is, okay, you go out and beat Lyoto Machida, who's 93 years of age. Then your next fight is Charlie Ward. Now, Charlie Ward is a tough out, an underrated fighter in his own right, but he's not the level of Gegard Mousasi, right? He doesn't have the skill set of Gegard Mousasi. And so if I'm Fabian, I don't think I necessarily want to grapple with Lyoto Machida, with Gegard Mousasi. Maybe I have to, but we're going to find out. The reason I love this fight is we're going to find out. It's another one. If Fabian isn't the level or isn't going to be the level that we potentially think he could be, we're going to find out in this fight, because he won't win and he won't look good against Gegard Mousasi. But if he goes out and stops Gegard or goes out and looks great over 3 rounds, well then, okay, we have some things to talk about. But I think Fabian, for all of his wins and all of his performances, has been underwhelming so far. He talks a massive game, but we need to see some performances now. And now's the time.
How much do you think that the rise of Leon and his kind of championship status has kind of given a boost to someone like Fabian Edwards? Because being in that kind of environment, Harry, has got to be beneficial. Like, as you take a drink, I finished. I didn't give you too much of a chance there.
Not at all. Like, I think it goes one of two ways, right? It's either massively motivating to be like, well, this is my brother. I've literally been to all the training sessions that he's been to. I've been in the same gym that he's been in. I've been under the same coaching that he's been in. Look what he's been able to do. I know I can talk to him. He's my fucking brother, right? I've watched him grow up with me. I know what it takes to do this type of thing. I know what it takes to get to this sort of level. It may be that somebody like a Fabian says, okay, well, I've seen that it's done, and now my motivation has skyrocketed, because if both of us can win titles in major MMA organizations, that's something that's really, really rare. Great. Maybe it is. Or maybe he goes in and he's like, oh, well, he's done it, and I've been all the same training sessions. Why have I not done it? Why have I not got this? Why have I not got that? You know? And I don't know the answer to that, right? That's a purely individualistic mentality thing. But I'll come back to the same point. If Fabian is going to capitalize on the name that he has and the hype that he's built around himself, Friday night's the night to do it, you know?
Absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. In the co-main event, Harry, real quick, we'll go through the rest of these fights. We have Brent Primus coming back to face Mansour Barnaoui. And I think that I'm a real big fan of Mansour. Have you been keeping an eye on his career a little bit? Do you like what he's got going on? He's coming in here to take on Brent Primus in the lightweight Grand Prix for the 1 million prize. He's done that already. He's won that within Road FC before, taking home that tournament. He's coming in here to do the exact same again in Bellator. A fantastic win against Adam Piccolotti in his last fight as well, and coming in here off the back of what is it, an 8-fight win streak right now, to take on a Brent Primus who hasn't been seen all that much, who's only won 1 in his last 4 fights, and a former lightweight champion in Bellator as well. This is going to be a tough one for Brent Primus, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I only sort of got hold of Mansour's career when I watched him beat Piccolotti, and I was vastly impressed. And we kind of know what we're getting with Brent Primus. Not a bad fighter in any way, stretch of the imagination. You don't win a Bellator title if you're a bad fighter. But I also think he's kind of one-dimensional a little, whereas Mansour is not that at all. And yeah, I'm excited to see. One, obviously we haven't seen Brent Primus since his loss to Shabley, and that was a year ago. And fair play. But let's see what's he been working on in the time off. Where's he been? Who's he been training with? What's Mansour going to bring to him in terms of a game plan? I have lots and lots of questions going into this one, so I'm excited for it for sure.
Yeah, me too. Like, there's no other way that I don't see a Barnaoui win here. I think he's way too well-rounded. He's got options in the grappling. He's also very explosive on the feet. And, you know, you can tell how comfortable he is about not getting taken down because he throws these wild shots as well. So that's going to be a very exciting co-main event. Douglas Lima will step in against Costello Van Steenis in the welterweight division. Douglas Lima, so surprisingly, coming in here on a 4-fight losing streak, having lost to Mousasi, Amosov, Page, and Jackson. Now, big, very good fighters there at the top of the division. Costello Van Steenis, a young and up-and-comer. It's similar enough to the main event. We're going to find out about Costello here, Harry, against a guy like Douglas Lima. And we're going to find out where Douglas Lima is at too. Will he let the young and up-and-comer kind of take his throne, take his position in the rankings? But it's been a massive fall from grace lately from Douglas Lima, hasn't it?
It's very, very strange. Very strange. You know, when he had that belt wrapped around his waist and people were talking about, oh, what a shame that he's not in the UFC. And oh my God, like what a slip. Wouldn't it be great if he came over and did the thing and whatever? And look, as we've said, losing to Gegard Mousasi, losing to Rory McDonald, losing to Yaroslav Amosov, losing to Michael Venom Page. These are losses that any fighter can be not proud of, but you can't look at that and say, oh, fuck, I really shouldn't have lost to that guy. You know, you're in the upper echelon of a very, very good division in Bellator. And so they're kind of throwing you a bone here a little. Like, I like the matchmaking because Costello Van Steenis has got good hands, can fight everywhere. But if you're Douglas Lima anywhere near 100%, you destroy this fella. Like, you absolutely destroy this fella. And so for Costello Van Steenis, he goes in knowing that Douglas Lima, sorry, definitely, Jesus, he'd batter Diego Lima. But if Douglas Lima is coming in here and he looks anything like the 4-fight losing streak, Douglas Lima, well, then you've got a chance here, and you've got a chance to build a name, and you've got a chance to vault yourself into the upper echelon of this division. And I don't know. It's a tough fight for both men. It's a tough fight.
Yeah, it is. And for me, Harry, it's like, okay, obviously we're looking at Mousasi and Edwards as maybe next in line to get the shot. But like, if you're Costello Van Steenis or maybe Douglas Lima here, maybe not so much Douglas Lima, but especially with Costello, if he comes out here and produces a highlight reel knockout and stuff like that, you never know what might happen in the middleweight division. Or, you know, if Fabian Edwards struggles to a decision or maybe loses a close decision to Mousasi, Costello Van Steenis has a win over him already. He may jump all the queue and get the next title shot. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Running down through the rest of the fight real quick. Thibault Gouti takes on Kane Moussa in the 155-pound division at lightweight. That's going to be a belter of a fight too. Moussa looked really good in his last fight. Denise Keyholes will take on Paula Christina in a 125-pound division that still has no title or no real division. Oliver Enkamp will take on Luka Poklit. And that's a kind of a fight that does have a little bit of Irish interest, obviously, with Luka competing out of SBG and looking really good with the Lucinator choke against Deanto Shiro in his last fight. Explain the Lucinator choke to me, Harry, a little bit for a guy who doesn't really know too much as yourself about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
I am going to say that I don't remember that choke. I've watched far too much MMA. What we'll do is I will go back and I will watch it and we will talk about it on the breakdown. Promise.
Sounds good to me. He goes in there against Oliver Enkamp, who's also coming in after a buggy choke win against Mark Lemminger. So it's the battle of the fancy submissions here, Harry, between Oliver Enkamp and Luka Poklit.
A buggy choke, I can talk. But yeah,
yes, I caught you on the hoop. I was like, if you didn't know and you are able to break down a Lucinator choke like that, I'd be like giving you 5 gold stars, my friend. I did catch you on the hop there, so that is forgivable. Going down after that, then we have Saul Rogers against Davy Gallon. That's another great fight. This is a sneaky good card here on Friday. Gets the juices going for Saturday. Yves Landau will take on Peter Nedzilski, who we know from taking on most recently Richie Smullen and obviously Pedro Carvalho as well. He's going back in there in 145-pound division. Sarvajan Kamadov takes on Kevin Petchy in a catchweight 141. Tim Wilde against Chris Gonzalez in 155-pound division. And we'll stop at Asil Ajouj. Actually, before we stop at Asil Ajouj, Stephen Hill takes on Nicolo Soli in the first fight of the night. Yeah, I just wanted to give Nicolo Soli a shout out representing SBG as well, coming in off his split decision win over Boomer Camara at Bellator 287. Comes in against the undefeated Stephen Hill. So that'll be interesting to see what he does. A little bit of Irish interest, but the last of the Irish interest will fall on Asela Juge as he comes in to face George Sasu in an all-French encounter in the 145-pound division. Look, we spoke ourselves about Asela Juge ahead of his last fight, Harry, when he went in there and got the win over Lima Kraken. We spoke very well about Lima Kraken and Asela Juge and how big and prospect guys that they are in the 145-pound division. And I think, in the aftermath of that fight, how did you kind of see Asela Juge's performance?
I think both of them came out with more merit than we expected. Both of them fought their absolute heart out. It was a really, really well-matched fight. Liam had his moments. Asela Juge had his moments. And obviously, I think it was the right decision in the end. Asela Juge getting the nod, landing the more damaging shots and looking good in some of the moments and looking good defensively in some of the moments where he had to. And so I think here, it's another, I don't know anything about George Sasu. I know that he's lost to Elias Buliad, who's a very, very good kickboxer. And so there's questions there. And somebody of Asela Juge's kickboxing style is going to look at that win and say, okay, this is something that I could be exploiting, absolutely. But for Asela Juge, this type of fighter, this level of fighter in terms of record, obviously I don't know his skill set, but if this type of level of record is perfect for him. We don't need to be. The Liam McCracken was a big, big, big fight. And I think as both of those men go through their careers, we're going to see just how big of a fight that was at such an early point in their career. And now I think with Asela Juge winning that fight, we can now take a little bit of a slow roll, let him build his career up, let him just grow into himself as a person, grow into himself as a man, grow into himself as an MMA style. And these sorts of fights are the right sort of fight for him. And especially under a Bellator banner where with certain prospects, they look after them and they build them the right way.
Absolutely. I think that's exactly what this fight is after coming in against a hot prospect. Look at George Sasu, who's no joke either. He has a win over Reculang, who's a current UFC fighter as well. So, that's not to be snuffed at either. But yeah, a lot of Irish interest across both cards this weekend. SBG is busy. Ian Garry is out there in action on the UFC card, as is Johnny Walker in the co-main event. We will break down all the action on the Balance Breakdown. Head over to SevereMMA.com before then and check out the Severe Spotlight. See who the spotlight is going to be shown on there. Check out the Owl Triangle. Check out everything over on the YouTube channel. We'll be back. And last but not least, head on over to the Severe MMA Patreon. Hit up that barcode right in the top corner. Sign up SevereMMA /points or SevereMMA pod /points. Great content over there. There's a really, really good speakers corner that I can't wait to listen to about Fighter Pay, Harry, is it? Maybe give us a little bit of a sneak peek for anyone who hasn't heard that yet.
Oh God, I don't know if I can. It was a really long one. We started out about building a profile as an MMA fighter, whether the UFC is the right place to go when you're building a profile. Is Bellator the right place? Is earning money better than glory? It's a fucking lot. It's a great one.
Tune in. It always is great on Speaker's Corner. Follow Harry Powell at BJJ_Harry Powell, at O'Neill MMA on all social media platforms. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you liked what you heard. We're bringing back the intro music soon. Give us time. We have to do a little bit of work around that. We'll get there. We'll bring it to you guys again. But for now, that's it for another preview show. Check out the big podcast on Sunday. Check out the Balance Breakdown next Tuesday. We'll be back to break down all the fights we just discussed right now. Take care, enjoy yourselves, and enjoy the fights.